The latest. Thank you for your love and support. I appreciate you all. We are the only poor people, and that is the reason to which we are always borrowing day in, day out, because we don't have what it takes to take care of ourselves. But it has turned out that even the people that are at the top and claim they have the biggest economy and the boast of it, oh, it's shocking. The most interesting part is the United States of America. According to Yanis Varoufakis, that it is amazing how the world is run because everybody is in debt, and that the United States of America, their debt is $38 trillion. China is 18, and that Japan, that African Union, we saw that some leaders went there recently, and Japan even pledged to help Africans boost whatever in Africa, is owing over 200,000 more than its economy. Is owing over 200,000 times more than its economy. And these are the people that are supporting Africa and always sit down to point fingers at us that we don't have anything. And according to him, that people do not understand how this economy runs or how financial institutions run, that it is our own money. Like he took the United States of America, that people are saying this person this person does that. How do these people get the money that they are borrowing? It is from the banks. And who are the people that are sending the money to the banks? It is you and I.
I want to talk to you about something that sounds like a riddle or perhaps a magic trick. Every major nation on earth is drowning in debt. The United States owes $38 trillion. China, 18 trillion. Japan carries debt worth 230% of its entire economy. The United Kingdom, France, Germany, all deeply in the red. And yet, somehow, the world keeps turning. Money keeps flowing. Markets function. So here's the puzzle that keeps people awake at night. If everyone is in debt, who exactly is doing the lending? Where does all this money come from? It's a perfectly reasonable question. When you borrow money from a bank, the bank has that money. It came from somewhere: depositors, investors, the bank's capital. There's a lender and a borrower. Simple. But when we scale this up to nations, something very strange happens. The arithmetic stops making intuitive sense. Let me walk you through what's actually happening, because the answer is far more interesting than most people realize. And I should warn you, once you understand how this system really works, you'll never look at economics the same way again. Let's start with the United States, because it's the easiest case to examine. As of October 2025, American federal debt hit $38 trillion. That's not a typo. 38 trillion. To put that in perspective, if you spend $1 million every single day, it would take you more than 100,000 years to spend that much money. Now, who holds this debt? Who are these mysterious lenders? The first answer might surprise you. Americans themselves. The largest single holder of United States government debt is actually the Federal Reserve, America's central bank. They own roughly $6.7 trillion of treasury securities. Think about that for a moment. The American government owes money to the American government's bank, but that's just the beginning. Another $7 trillion is held in what we call intragovernmental holdings. This is the government owing money to itself. The Social Security Trust Fund owns $2.8 trillion of United States debt. The Military Retirement Fund owns another $1.6 trillion. Medicare holds a substantial chunk. So the government borrows from Social Security to fund other programs and promises to pay it back later. It's like borrowing from your left pocket to pay your right pocket. So far, we're at about $13 trillion that America essentially owes to itself. That's more than a third of the total debt already. The question, who's the lender, becomes strange, doesn't it? But let's continue. The next big category is private domestic investors, ordinary Americans. through various channels. Mutual funds hold about 3.7 trillion. State and local governments own 1.7 trillion. Banks, insurance companies, pension funds, together, private American investors hold roughly $24 trillion of United States debt. Now, this is where it gets fascinating. Where did these pension funds and mutual funds get their money? From American workers, from retirement accounts, from ordinary people saving for their future. So, in a very real sense, the American government is borrowing from its own citizens. Let me tell you a story about how this works in practice. Imagine a school teacher in California. She's 55 years old, been teaching for 30 years. Every month, a portion of her salary goes into her pension fund. That pension fund needs to invest that money somewhere safe, somewhere that will reliably pay returns so she can retire comfortably. What could be safer than lending to the United States government? So her pension fund buys treasury bonds. That same teacher probably worries about the national debt. She's heard the news, seen the frightening numbers, and she's right to be concerned. But here's the twist. She is one of the lenders. Her retirement depends on the government continuing to borrow money and pay interest on those bonds. If the United States suddenly paid off all its debt tomorrow, her pension fund would lose one of its safest, most reliable investments. This is the first big secret of government debt in wealthy countries. The citizens are simultaneously the borrowers, they benefit from government spending, and the lenders. Their savings, their pensions, their insurance policies, all invested in government bonds. Now, the fourth category, foreign investors. This is what most people think of when they imagine who holds American debt. China owns about $760 billion. Japan owns 1.1 trillion. The United Kingdom owns 723 billion. In total, foreign investors, both governments and private entities, hold about $8.5 trillion of United States debt, roughly 30% of the publicly held portion. But here's what's interesting about foreign holdings. Why do other countries buy American debt? Let's take Japan as an example. Japan has the world's third largest economy. They export cars, electronics, machinery to the United States. Americans buy these products with dollars. Japanese companies earn those dollars. Now what? Well, those companies need to convert dollars into yen to pay their workers and suppliers back home. But if they all try to exchange their dollars at once, the yen would strengthen dramatically, making Japanese exports more expensive and less competitive. So what does Japan do? The Bank of Japan buys those dollars and invests them in United States Treasury securities. It's a way to recycle trade imbalances. Think of it this way. America buys physical goods from Japan. Sony televisions, Toyota cars. Japan takes those dollars and buys American financial assets, treasury bonds. The money flows in a circle. The debt is just the accounting record of that circular flow. China operates on the same principle, though their motivations are more complex. For years, China deliberately kept its currency weak to boost exports. They accumulated massive dollar reserves. What do you do with $3 trillion? You can't exactly stuff it under a mattress. The United States Treasury market is one of the few places deep enough and liquid enough to absorb that much money. So they buy treasury bonds. This brings us to a crucial point for much of the world. United States government debt isn't a burden being forced on unwilling lenders. It's an asset they want to own. Treasury bonds are considered the safest financial asset in the world. When uncertainty strikes, a war, a pandemic, a financial crisis, money floods into United States treasuries. It's called flight to safety. But I've been focusing on America. What about the rest of the world? Because this is a global phenomenon. Global public debt now stands at $111 trillion. That's 95% of the entire world's economic output. The debt has grown by $8 trillion in just 1 year. And here's the crucial fact. The United States and China together account for more than half of all government debt in the world. 38 trillion for the United States, 18 trillion for China. These two countries are essentially the anchors of the global debt system. Japan presents perhaps the most extreme case. Japanese government debt is 230% of gross domestic product. If Japan were a person, this would be like earning £50,000 a year and owing 115,000 bankruptcy territory, right? And yet, Japan continues to function. Interest rates on Japanese government bonds are close to zero, sometimes even negative. Why? Because Japanese citizens buy the bonds. Japan's debt is almost entirely held domestically. Japanese banks, Japanese pension funds, Japanese insurance companies, Japanese households, they own 90% of Japanese government debt. Think about the psychology of that for a moment. Japanese people are famous for being high savers. They sock away money diligently. But where does that money go? Into government bonds, because they're perceived as the safest place to store wealth. And what does the government do with that borrowed money? It spends it on schools, hospitals, infrastructure, pensions, benefiting those same citizens. It's a closed loop. Now, we come to the mechanism that really explains how this entire system works. It's something that sounds arcane, but it's absolutely fundamental. Quantitative easing, or as it's sometimes called, QE. Here's what quantitative easing actually is. Central banks create money out of thin air. And I mean literally, create it. Digitally, with keystrokes, and use that newly created money to buy government bonds. Let me say that again, because it's important. The Federal Reserve, the Bank of England, the European Central Bank, the Bank of Japan, they don't have to find money somewhere to lend to their governments. They create it. They increase the numbers in their accounts. That money didn't exist before. Now it does. During the financial crisis of 2008 and 2009, the Federal Reserve created about $3.5 trillion this way. During the COVID pandemic, they created another 4 trillion. The money didn't come from anywhere. It was simply created. Now, before you think this is some kind of elaborate fraud, let me explain why central banks do this and how it's supposed to work. During a crisis, a financial meltdown, a pandemic, the economy seizes up. People stop spending because they're afraid. Businesses stop investing because there's no demand. Banks stop lending because they're worried about defaults. This creates a vicious cycle. Less spending means less income, means less spending. The government needs to step in, build hospitals, send stimulus checks, save failing banks, whatever the emergency requires. But the government also needs to borrow enormous amounts of money to do this. In normal times, there might not be enough willing lenders at reasonable interest rates. So the central bank steps in, it creates money and buys government bonds, keeping interest rates low and ensuring the government can borrow what it needs. The theory is that this newly created money will flow into the economy, encouraging lending and spending, and help end the recession. Once the economy recovers, the central bank can reverse the process, sell those bonds back into the market, destroying the money, bringing things back to normal. That's the theory. Reality is more complicated. The first round of quantitative easing after the financial crisis seemed to work reasonably well. It prevented a complete economic collapse. But here's what else happened. Asset prices exploded. Stock markets soared. Real estate prices jumped. Why? Because all that newly created money ended up in the hands of banks and financial institutions. They didn't necessarily lend it out to small businesses or home buyers. Instead, they bought stocks, bonds, and property. The wealthy, who own most financial assets, got much wealthier. Research by the Bank of England estimated that quantitative easing boosted stock and bond prices by about 20%. Sounds good. Until you realize that 40% of the stock market is owned by the wealthiest 5% of the population. The richest 5% of British households became about £128,000 wealthier on average. Meanwhile, families who owned little to no financial assets saw minimal benefit. This is one of the great ironies of modern economic policy. We create money to save the economy, but that money disproportionately benefits those who are already wealthy. The system works, but it exacerbates inequality. Now, let's talk about the cost of all this debt. Because debt isn't free, it accumulates interest. The United States paid interest of $1 trillion in fiscal year 2025. That's right, $1 trillion just in interest payments. That's more than the country spends on its entire military. It's the second largest item in the federal budget, behind only Social Security. And that number is rising fast. Interest payments nearly tripled over 3 years, from $497 billion in 2022 to $909 billion in 2024. By 2035, interest payments are projected to reach $1.8 trillion per year over the next decade. The United States government will spend $13.8 trillion just on interest.
What we save is what government takes. And that is the reason to which they are able to run every blessed day, and they still borrow, and the world is still running, and they claim that the debt of other people are always high. And one thing that we need to understand as Africans is that it isn't that we are the only ones that are in debt. Even the people that have covered years are owing. Our leaders are much aware. But it is you and I that do not know how the system is run that need to learn from what Yanis is teaching us. Because we are living in total darkness. We are just there, and all we hear is, it's like these people have printed some money down, and whenever we need it, like Africans, they always project. We'll go and they give their money to us, and we'll go there and pay. But it is much bigger than that. And we have to seek knowledge in all these angles. We need to understand how things are run around us before we'll be able to move alongside the world. We cannot win this battle if we don't have the requisite knowledge about how things work. How are these people able to cover up their debt and then make it look as if it's Africa that is owing the rest of the world, and we rather need them? They are able to cover up things, run things to the point that even their own people do not have a clue. We need to understand how things are done in the favor of other people. And the mentality that we have, that Africans, we are poor, and for that matter, people must give to us, should be a thing of the past. Like when our leaders went to Japan, Africans were celebrating on social media that they have been able to get certain things from Japan, and some of our leaders are very smart. But look at the debt of Japan. How is Japan getting the money to give to you, the African, which is not free? Which is not free. Africans are going to pay big time. After the Berlin Conference, they have designed the system in a way that is going to help them. Like the United States of America, one time, one professor said that the United States of America will never pay a debt because the debt is in the US dollars. So all that they need is to print it. But it affects us as Africans, because the more we go there to borrow, the more we burden our economy. We have landed in a system that is not favoring us, and is teaching us the wrong things, to the point that even we, the citizens, love everything of these people instead of us loving the continent and seeing how best we can come together to set our economy free. And we have everything it takes. Why are we not doing the right thing? It's because of the systems that they've kept in place. And if truly we want to move away from these systems, we will need to unite before we can defeat the system. The system is against us, and we are helping the system to thrive. There is no one that will come here and set us free if we do not set ourselves free. So that's the latest around the world and in Europe.